Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another episode of By the Time We Get to Phoenix, Our View from the Back Seat. I want to welcome you to our podcast today and introduce someone who does not take a back seat to anybody, and that's my brother Kyle. Kyle, how are you this morning?
Good, very good. Good to be here.
Awesome. We had a very great day yesterday visiting Kyle up in the Canton, Akron area. Jeff and I drove up, and I'm always very thankful when we get there. Jeff drove, and he always seems to have some urgency. So I know now what it was like to live with A.J. Foyt, or one of the premier race car drivers, but we had a good time, and it's always a privilege and honor to be with my brothers. People have asked me, you don't have any friends? Yes, I do. I have 4 best friends. And so it's a great honor. I thought we had a great day yesterday. And there's a couple things I thought was funny before we get to our podcast. You looked over at Jeff one time and said, Jeff, you just reminded me, I want to take you guys over to where the Goodyear blimp is located. I thought that was pretty funny. I don't even know if you realize you said that.
No, not till afterwards. Poor Jeff.
And the other thing that came up, we call this Smith humor, by the way, and we're kind of rough on each other, but that's just the way it is, and no one should take it to heart. I was telling the story about when I first met Jim Donovan, who is now battling cancer, and I said I want to go see him at a mall, and he was signing autographs, and I was kind of nervous. This is 25 years ago, and I went up to his table. He's up there with the rest of the broadcast team, and I was trying to give him a compliment, and I said, whenever you're on, I always turn the radio off and turn the TV on. What I meant to say was, when the TV's on, I always turn that sound down and listen to you, but I got it completely backwards.
Yeah, he was the radio voice of the
That's right, the radio
Browns.
voice of the Browns, and he gave me the dirtiest look. I'll never forget that. But anyway, we want to welcome all our listeners here to our podcast, both of you, and welcome you to
the
our
others.
podcast.
We don't want to welcome.
We are radio's alternative to the Gong Show, is how I feel sometimes. But I want to talk about, on today's episode, by the time we get to Phoenix, and we could almost call this episode Before We Get to Phoenix, and I wanted to talk a little bit and get your perspective on the names that Mom and Dad gave us. Our family has a very prestigious history. It goes back to the Ball family, and there's quite a genealogy there. And I know you've done a lot of genealogy, but Mom, of course, was a Butterman, Ellen Butterman. Dad, Lester Smith. But how they met, it's going to be on another podcast. And but when they were married, they kind of shared the duties of naming us. I was the firstborn, and of course, Dad wanted to name me Bobby Joe. And I often wondered why, but in a previous recording I have of Dad, he said that there were several people in his family named Bob or Bobby. For some reason, he liked that name. Smith family was from Southern Ohio and into West Virginia. And thank God Mom stepped in and said, no, we're not going to name him Bobby Joe. I wouldn't be here speaking right now if she did. They ended up naming me Brian Keith. I have no idea really where that name came from. I don't know if you have any perspective on that at all.
Well, as far as I remember, it was the actor Brian Keith, and I just get the feeling Mom was heavily influenced by things that she would see on TV and famous people and so on. And I wonder if she just didn't attribute our names to having some connection to success, because my name has a similar origin to someone who's well-known and famous. And I wonder, with your name, if it's just not a character that she liked, and that was the actor's real name, and she liked that guy and attributed that to success, and she thought that by giving us our names, that there was a connection to what our ultimate success would be in life.
I think there's something to that. And then later, of course, son number 2 was Jeffrey Lynn Smith. Dad's middle name.
There's some controversy on this.
Well, there is by the spelling of the name, which is etched in stone, literally. Dad, for some reason, he was given the duty, the responsibility of having the name spelled correctly on the tombstone. And it's
the permanent record of Jeff's
permanent record, and it's spelled Jeffrey, I believe.
Erey.
Not the standard spelling of that, and so that's there every time Jeff goes to the tombstone. But Dad's middle name was Lee. Mom was Leora, and I think they liked sort of that rhythmic way that the names were spelled. So Jeff became Jeffrey Lynn, and again, I don't know where that came from. If you know any stories that I don't know. I don't think Jeff's real fond of his name. Whenever he writes his name, I don't think he's putting Jeffrey Lynn Smith.
Well, Jeff was ahead of his time there a little bit. He has a binary middle name that could go either male or female. And we've just lost Jeff as a listener today.
Yeah, he's just clicked off. But it's very fitting. You can take it either way. Of course, sometimes we take Jeff out.
Either way,
we can. Jeff, if you're still on now, we're just joking. It's that Smith humor that we keep talking about.
Then lost Irene as a listener.
And then, of course, we had Ricky Wayne and Randy Lane, and I'll let you do some commentary on that if you'd like.
Well, again, like you started off, they liked that rhythmic, and especially them being twins. That was something Mom was proud of that, and she should be. They were gigantic babies when they were born. Literally, I mean, each one of them weighed 8 pounds 1 ounce, so they were 16.2 pounds of babies that Mom delivered. Mom was 5'1".
That's right.
But yeah, she liked that rhythmic name. But of course, Rick was given a name that sounds cute as a little boy, but when you're in a doll being called Rick, he's a little bit different.
Though we still call him that every once in a while.
Yeah.
Ricky. The funny thing is, on the birth certificates, officially, Rick was Randy, and Randy was Rick. I don't know if some people know that, but I can't see Rick as a Randy, and I can't see Randy as a Rick. So it worked out okay. And again, one of those names that we don't see too many people named with the name of Lane. It's very unique, as Randy is. I'm sure he loves that name, and you never know.
And the other interesting thing relative to names in our family, everybody in our family has a nickname.
Right.
And Randy got his due to how Rick said his name as a little boy. He called him Wowie. He couldn't say Randy, so he called him Wowie. And that became Randy's nickname. Wah is what Mom called Randy.
And I noticed yesterday Jeff kept calling you by your nickname. And I'd love to hear the story on that. Doc, D-O-C.
Well, Rick calls me Doc. Jeff calls me Poke or Pokey.
Right.
And I got that nickname from Jeff. Primarily, he always used it because whenever you guys would go somewhere, and there's an age difference, there's 14 years difference between Brian and I. There is 12 between Jeff and I, and there is 9 between Rick and Randy and I. So there's a significant age difference. So whenever you guys would go anywhere and I would tag along, I was poking along because I was a little guy. So probably Jeff originated the name, said, "Come on, Pokey," and that became my nickname, Poke and Pokey, to this day.
I'm sure that's how it came about.
Yeah.
And of course, we have another episode we'll have to do where we didn't even know you were poking along with us, and it almost became a tragedy. Luckily, nothing happened. We didn't even know you were following us, and next thing we know, we hear that you were trying to get a hold of us and so forth. And then we come to your name, and I remember this one very well because in the early summer of 1971, Kyle Rote, Sr., and then, of course, then Junior, too, was on the Superstars. So we kept hearing that name, Mom did, Kyle. And I remember her saying, as the TV was on, "Oh, boy, I really like that name, That is such a good name. And of course, she really was fond of Kyle Rote Sr., who was a very accomplished sports announcer, handsome guy. And I think it planted a seed in her mind that she was going to name you Kyle. Originally, your name was not Kyle Patrick, right?
Yeah, yep, that's right.
It was Kyle Edward, and then after a couple days, because Mom thinks about things, you talk about being an overthinker, that's Mom. She said, I don't like that name Kyle Edward, and I don't even know if it was on the birth certificate, Kyle Edward. You'd probably know more about that. She changed it to Kyle Patrick, and it kind of just went off the tongue very easily, and so that's what it became, and it's more fitting, of course.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it was on my birth certificate, because if you look at it, you can tell it was erased and they wrote Patrick over it.
Oh, I did not know that. That's interesting to know.
Yep.
So, anything else you want to say about the names before we move on? I know Mom was really teased mercilessly about her name Butterman. So even though it was a very uncommon, and I love the name Butterman, by the way, Mom did not like that last name. She was teased pretty good, Butterball, and Butterfat, and all that sort of thing. So she actually liked the very common name of Smith.
Yeah. Well, that's one part of it. I guess the other part of that name is that's not truly our family lineage, because our great-grandfather was adopted. So we don't know where, to this day, maybe we could find out, but we don't know truly our lineage on that particular branch, where it goes back to.
Yeah, and I would love to know. I think that's the real great disappointment, that we don't really know what our background is in that regard. Yeah. And I just hate that.
The other interesting thing about names in our family, we put significance on it, and our mom did, but it holds a lot of significance, again, in our lineage. If you look at our genealogy, there's a lot of juniors, and there's a lot of times where the name gets passed on, or some part of the name. And we unknowingly, I think, carried on that tradition, because your boys have some derivative of either your first or last name. Jeff's son does. Mm-hmm. Rick's son does. Randy did the same thing with his kids, and I have with mine as well. My son has my middle name also. With Mom's name, the significance of that is her middle name is a combination of her mother and father. Mm-hmm. Because her father's name was Ora.
That's correct.
And then her mother, I'm not sure, I know where the Lee came from, I just can't remember, but that's where her middle name came from, Lee Ora.
That's correct.
A combination of her father's name and so on. So names in our family, we put a lot of value and thought into them, and there's always a connection either to a prior generation or something in each one of our names.
Yeah, I don't think there's another person in the United States named Ellen Leora Butterman. Now, believe it or not, I looked it up prior to this podcast. There was 2 people in the United States named Ellen Butterman, but of course they did not have that middle name. One lived in California, the other in New York. One lived to be about 91, so she has a very unique name. Only 3 people in the United States named Ellen Butterman, which is very strange. There's also a very famous song on the country music side named "Poor Ellen Smith," which we found after our mother had passed. A very sad song. I won't go into that today, but it's a very sad song how this character, Ellen Smith, which might be based on a true story, was killed. So I want to go back to some other very interesting things about our family before we get to Phoenix, per se. Mom and Dad were married on Dad's birthday, October 23rd, 1955.
Right.
Mom actually passed away in the 50th year of them being married. They didn't quite make it. She passed away in January of 2005, and their 50th anniversary would have been October of 55. So Dad's one of the few people who actually got married on his birthday. So that I thought that was pretty significant, and it may go back to, Mom just said, "When do you want to get married?" Well, how about my birthday? So
Right.
we
Yeah,
don't
he
really
would say that.
really know about that.
Well, here's what's weird. We get into numbers and significance of that too. Our grandparents, so the Smith grandparents, our grandfather's birthday was, I'm forgetting. I think it's September 20th. But they actually got married a couple of days before his birthday. So his birthday would have been September 20th, and I think they were married September 18th. And I think Jeff will appreciate this part of the story and probably has thought about this too. So our dad was born in 32. He got married on the 23rd, so those numbers get flipped. He was 23 that day he got married. 2 and 3 equal 5. He was married in 55. And why is 5 significant? Well, he had 5 sons.
That's right. Exactly right. There's really something in the numbers. It's almost biblical. The Bible talks about numbers and how things just seem to have a rhythm and rhyme to it.
I'll do you one better, Brian.
Yes,
sorry
go ahead.
to cut you off. So our grandfather was born in the 9th month. He was the first son. Our dad was born in the 10th month. He was the first son. You were born in the 11th month, and you were the first son.
I did not know that. That's amazing. Amazing to know that. My great-grandfather, just to put a bow on this, was born November 14th, 1857. So he was one day late from being 100 years to the day I was born. His name was Joseph Butterman. So I was very pleased when I saw that. And there's a lot of information about him on the internet that you can find. So we're talking about names today. And if you don't have anything else to say about that, I will move on. Do you remember any trips that you took to Phoenix after our epic trip? The first one was 73. We did another one in 74, came back in 75. Did you ever take any trips with the family to Phoenix after that, after we were more grown up and left the home, that you want to talk about? Any interesting stories there?
Yeah, so midway through would have been my first grade year, so that would have been 78. Mom and Dad decided again to give Phoenix a shot to live. And again, consistent with the other trips, they only stayed there for just a couple of months. And the weird thing about that, in 78, I don't have any recollection of Rick and Randy, who would have still been home, going with us. And if I remember correctly, they might have stayed with you. I think they did.
I can confirm that. I came home from work. I had just gotten married. I made very little money, and there was a note. Rick and Randy are going to stay with you to finish out the school year. And I was so shocked. I to this day, even though that's 45 years ago. No, they did not go with you all.
Well, and the timing of that is weird because Greg, your oldest son, that was about the time he was born. He was just coming along, and here you've got a little infant, and then you're basically taking custody of Rick and Randy.
That's right.
Who were, almost 16 at that point for them, and it was only supposed to be for a few months. But our duration in Phoenix was so brief that we were home by the end of the school year. So I finished out the first grade year out in Phoenix, and then we were home before they ever had a chance to come out and stay with us.
Yeah, it's just amazing, and we almost need to have a psychological profile to find out what was in the thinking there that kept happening. And it was always never at the end of a school year or anything like. It was in the middle of the school year or before you completed a school year.
Right,
is when that sort of thing happened. There was another. Oh, go right ahead.
I was going to say the other weird thing as I think about that is, if people say, well, maybe they weren't able to get jobs or get footing. No, we had housing. Our car was there. Mom and Dad both had a job. The weird thing is, and this goes back to their lack of planning, we lived in a trailer. That seemed to be something they were drawn to also, to live in trailers. But it was a small trailer, so I don't know how they were, because it would have been a 2-bedroom. I don't know how they were planning on Rick and Randy coming out and living with us, 4 people, and basically living in a 2-bedroom trailer is the other thing.
And at 16, I think maybe they just said, no, we're not going to do that. We're
Right.
getting established here. And it very easily could have turned into something where Rick and Randy, and maybe they did a little bit, just said, we're going to be off on our own here. We're going to make our own way, and we're not going to have that kind of lifestyle where I kind of was on my own, had a newborn coming, just about being born. And in fact, Greg was born in April of 1978. And again, I didn't make much money, I can tell you that. So it was very interesting. I do have a rather funny story. Brenda and I, my first wife, decided that we wanted to take a trip, and we thought, well, we're going to go to Phoenix. And again, I still had that pull with Phoenix also. And this was in 1981.
Yep.
And again, I was very young. I had Greg. I don't remember you going on that trip. I don't think you did.
I did not go.
So I said, Dad, we're going to take a vacation. I've got time, and I've got some money saved. I don't have much. 1981. We're going to drive to Phoenix. So, well, I really want to go. I help you with that. I said, well, we'll pick you up. I think they lived in Bucyrus at that time.
Yeah.
So it was me and Brenda and the little baby, who was not quite 3 years old, 2.5, almost 3. So I drive up to their house, honk the horn. Dad's coming out. We're ready to go. And here comes Dad. And I said, well, we're ready to go. He said, hang on a minute. Mom's going with us. What? I don't know if I have enough money in it. Here comes Mom. Mom gets in the car like everything was planned. I remember it, so vividly. And I just kind of looked at Brenda, and she was packed, not much packing, ready to go. And so we set off for Phoenix. It took us our 3 days. But here's the thing. I had very little money. We had just enough money that we thought we're going to be able to make it. Dad said, you know what? I'm not comfortable with you driving. I know the route. I'm going to drive your car. I said, Dad, I'll drive. I'm 23. No, I'm not driving. He drove almost exclusively the whole way. I've never told anybody these stories, by the way. And I had a car. Looking back, I was young and foolish. I thought that car would make it there back, no problem. But we had the extra weight and everything of 2 extra people in the car. So we got there, and we started having trouble around New Mexico. And of course, Dad drove and drove. He drove cars into the ground. No rest for the cars. And we got to one point where we couldn't turn the car off. We knew, Dad knew a little bit about car. He said, well, I'm afraid to turn the car off. We can't do that. We're going to have to drive through. So we couldn't even take breaks and sleep. We had to leave the car on. I remember him getting gas, and the cars had to stay on. We could not. He said, if you turn the car off, it won't start. So we drive, and he was just a marathon driver. So we get to Phoenix, and I remember Dad said, well, we made it here. It looks like smooth sailing. And I said, Dad, there's a stoplight. Stop. And he squealed. He slammed on the brakes. And we must have slid 30 feet. Luckily, there was no car ahead of us. But he was tired from not sleeping. And I remember saying, Dad, red light. And slid. And it ruined my tires. A tire blew out. So he said, well, we're going to have to figure out something to do. I said, well, I got a little bit of money for the vacation. Never dreamed I'd have to spend, $500 for repairs. He said, well, I got it. I got the issue taken care of. We're going to stay with Dallas and Linda. I'm not making this up. So we got away from the hotel situation or motel, stayed with them for 3 or 4 or 5 days, whatever it was, got our car repaired. Dallas took us everywhere. Dallas was always happy to have us there.
Yeah.
And we did it. And then we left to go home. And of course, Dad had to drive the entire way in my car, my vacation with Mom there. When we got home, we had $14 left between the two families. $14 left. That's it. And Mom kept saying, I just pray we get home. I just praying. God, I heard her in the back. constantly praying, we got to get home. I didn't know why until I got home. I only had $10 in my billfold. Oh,
exactly.
Boy. That was my vacation. And I still have the pictures to prove it. Sometimes I think, did that really happen, or was that a nightmare? But what do you think of that?
Well, Brian, I was going to say some more detail behind that story. So 1981, I'm 9 years old. It's the roughest school year I've ever had. I had a teacher who was abusive. So Mom and Dad made a snap decision. When you told them you were going on vacation, Dad said, well, I'll help you drive. And just like you said. But remember this too. Mom was managing an apartment complex. That was her job. And they both were basically, but they had so little money. So we rented that apartment. We got the apartment for free. We had to pay utilities and everything on $400 a month. So whatever they took on that trip, it wasn't much. When Brian says they had $10 left, they probably took $20 on the trip. I don't think I'm exaggerating.
No.
But somehow, for that period of time, Rick and Randy took care of me. But again, at that point, they were seniors in high school. They were wrapping up their senior year. And there was a lot of time I spent by myself as a 9-year-old. Well, not even a 9-year-old in a one-bedroom apartment. Again, poor planning. While you guys were taking on this trip, and again, Mom and Dad did it as a snap decision. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked.
I've never heard that part of it. I just remember that I had a little child, 2.5 years old. I have a picture even. We stopped in Oklahoma City again, which, of course, that has bad memories anyway. That's the same city that I was picked up on, could have been killed, where we stopped in Oklahoma City because Dad took the same route every single time. And I have a picture of Mom pushing Greg, 2.5 years old, on a little swing set there. I mean, we again had a shoestring budget. And there was no planning at all.
No.
The amazing thing is, which I still cannot get over, is the faith that they had that everything was going to be all right. I'm amazed by their faith. And I know they believed in God because I remember hearing Mom in the back praying. And Dad had a silent prayer. He'd never prayed out loud, not at that time. But to this day, I'm inspired, really, how much faith they had that they were going to make it. And they were going to be all right. And they didn't care. It's like winning ugly. But they got the job done, and they made it. And it wasn't about really the journey. It was about the destination.
Yep, that's with them. Because the journey, because I think a lot of their journeys weren't very good in life. So their goal was to get to a destination, a solution, a change. That's what they were always after. Their current situation wasn't nearly as satisfying as where they thought they were going.
No, there's an old saying that opportunity doesn't make appointments. I mean, things just kind of happen, and they weren't into planning. So as an adult now, I am absolutely meticulous the way I plan everything. I'm not kidding. If you would see how I plan everything to the T. Whatever it might be on any type of trip, even for my day, if I'm just going to Columbus or whatever it might be, I have everything in detail.
I'm the same way.
And I know you are, because I was just going to say you had planned for days. Once we made the decision, we're going to come up and see you yesterday. That everything was definitely planned. It ended up being just a tremendous day. We got to do some things, and we're still in the family. I know it came up with me and Jeff that some of the things that I did to him, and I want to make it really clear that I'm not that person anymore. Obviously, you and I have talked about this. I don't know why I was the way I was, really. I do know that I wanted to be the only child, and that's pretty obvious. And I remember Mom, and not only Mom, but June has told me this, and Aunt Ruth, that when Jeff came along, they saw the look on my face at a year and a half old, that there was one report that I even tried to kill him. I actually tried to harm him. But there were times, though, that I did try to protect my brothers. There was one story that I'm hoping Jeff tells on tape. on record about how we would fight for each other and everything. We actually wish we could have recorded our talks yesterday for several hours about some of the memories. I hope we can get that on record about what kind of family that we were. Maybe the most unique family in the history of the United States. Some of the things we went through and the quirkiness of our family, but also how through all that chaos, it was almost controlled chaos. You have an advanced degree. I have an advanced degree. Jeff graduated of Ohio State. Rick and Randy, both advanced degrees, very high in their level of their work ethic. Rick just retired early from a job as the superintendent of the Dayton school system. Very, very successful, lots of honors. Jeff received a global award after a lot of deliberation on a panel. He was a global winner. You have tremendous recognition. You've become a very accomplished speaker. In fact, you do podcasts for my students at Ohio State, which they've commented on. So through all that, we have been successful. I don't know if we're successful by the world's terms, but from a term of morality and spirituality and family, we've really come a long way based on what we went through before Phoenix, on the way to Phoenix, and by the time we got to Phoenix, we were a very unique family. We could have been on I don't know if it would have been a comedy, but it would have been a drama TV show.
Well, definitely. Yeah, definitely. When you talk about reality shows, we would have been good subject matter for that. And the other thing that I've said before, I think there's that fine line between where we've ended up and possibly this all could have gone south for all of us. And what I'm speaking of is more from a criminal background. Typically, people who have the instability that we talk about in our backgrounds, they don't have success. They have other issues that they've dealt with in their life. And we all have quite a bit of success. I mean, even owning homes and living in the same place for a number of years. We talk about instability that we have, but yet, Brian, you've lived in the same house for a number of years now and haven't moved. Wouldn't dream of it.
Nope.
Jeff has lived in just only a couple of houses over the last probably 15 years or so, has worked at the same company for 17 years.
That's right.
Randy has been married for however many years he's up to now, 30 or so. They've only lived in 2 homes. I've lived in the same house since 2004, so I've been here 19 years. So the irony of these stories is we portray an unstable growing up where we literally in a dozen or more schools, dozens of houses, but our lives are almost the exact opposite of what we describe, which is very ironic.
Very. I think they were just searching. We only have a few moments left, everyone. I want to kind of end this podcast, and I hope to have a lot more, especially with Kyle, who was the youngest, but even though he was young, he saw a lot and has basically a photographic memory. My memory's not so good, I think, because I just want to kind of forget about some of that sort of thing. But I think Mom and Dad were searching without, where the brothers and the family, we are more introspective. We search from within to find the answers. And I think we're finding them now. But I do want to spend a few moments through all this chaos and the change and the upheaval. I think about the family. My 3 sons, and I ended up having 3 sons, are just very, very stable. Gregory Brian, again, you went back to the name. I named Greg Brian, middle name. Keith, which is my middle name, Keith Ryan. And of course, Marcus. You named Nathan. Is Nathan's middle name
Patrick?
Patrick, same as yours.
Same as me.
Rick's children, just wonderful kids. I call them kids, and if they're listening, I don't mean to be offensive to you at all, but to us, you're still our kids. Jeff has won He's one of the most incredible grandfathers I've ever been around in my life. Him and Irene, he just amazes me. I don't come close to what he has done. I've never been around a more generous person than Jeff. So I want to talk about that a little bit, because I think Jeff, growing up, said, well, Brian hates me, he's trying to kill me, which is true. I was trying to do that. But now that we're adults and I look back, I appreciate him so much. He was really my right-hand man. If you look at picture after picture of me and Jeff, Mom would have us there. He was always by my right hand.
Right.
He was always by my side. You know, I've known him longer than any other living person, when you think about that. He's always there. You know, we've had our difficulties in the past. Those are all gone. You know, I'm going to be 66 years old tomorrow, everyone. 66. I didn't get a birthday card from anybody, but that's okay. No, I'm kidding. I'm teasing. At my age, you don't want birthday cards, but
cash.
No, cash only. Thank you. But he's been there. Rick and Randy, they may fight and bicker, but I'm telling you, they are just they don't go anywhere without the other. And I don't care what the circumstances is. Rick saying, you know, I wish Randy was here. Rick's where's Randy? Randy the same way. Well, Rick, you know, Rick's not here, but they're just tied at the hip as twins. So, and I remember Mom talking about when she was ready to have them, where the doctor even said, "Boy, they're really active in there. they're just fighting back and forth. It's like Jacob and Esau from the biblical days." And they love being with each other, so there's a closeness there. So I'd like to go into that in further detail. Would love to get them on the podcast. Maybe that will happen someday, but not everybody can be a talker, and I understand that. But I'm very thankful for the family. You and Becky work hard with Nathan. Nathan is you know, just an incredible young guy. He will end up going, you said, to Kent State in the fall, which is hard to believe. We've kind of seen him just grow as just a baby, and now he's ready to graduate high school. He goes to the same high school as LeBron James. Is that right?
Yeah, he sure does. Yeah,
born in the same hospital.
St. Mary. Yeah, born in the same hospital.
Amazing. So follow the footsteps. Maybe not the same path that LeBron did. A little bit more. Well, I don't want to say anything negative, so I'll let it go with that.
Non-athletic.
But Jeff and Irene,
entrepreneur.
Absolutely, Jeff and Irene with their grandkids, and Jeff is after Adam grew up. Jeff and Irene actually went into having their own. They were foster children, which they did a tremendous. Jeff, they actually won an award for that, which he never talks about. And of course, Rick is really great with kids. He's very much into a lot of charity work. Him and Mary. Mary is just a beautiful person inside and out.
And they adopted as well. Rick also adopted.
Exactly right. And of course, Randy is Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky, always happy, always willing to help anybody. His family is very close. Raised 2 beautiful children who actually paid off his house, I believe Randy said. Now, that's pretty amazing to have that type of family life, him, Teresa. So we're very happy and proud of our family. We'd like to delve more into the legacy of the Smith and Butterman. I know that on our dad's side, we have the Ball family. Are there any other names?
We're going to conclude this podcast, so stay tuned for the answers to those questions on the next podcast. So I want to thank my very special guest, my brother Kyle, as this podcast had to do with the names Smith, Butterman, the origins of a lot of names, some of the struggles that we overcame to become the people that we are today. So you've been listening to By the Time We Get to Phoenix, our view from the back seat, and stay tuned for the continuation on part 2 of this podcast. And again, Thank you for listening.